Last night, I found myself reflecting about how our reactions to different circumstances that life throws at us can not only change our own lives, but also change the lives of those who may live just near us, but also perhaps out of the reach of our imagination. I haven't lived long, perhaps, to give a thesis and give conclusions about this kind of idea. But for the short time I've lived on Earth, I found it a little bit interesting on how our reactions to these circumstances changes everything. 22 years ago, a certain young lady had dropped out of school due to an early pregnancy. And I don't know why, but she wasn't staying with her family. So she found life with a young gentleman who was very hardworking and looking up to the future. She tells me that the only reason she found her life with this gentleman was because he was so much thinking about how he could change his realistic or his realm, all things around him. And a year later, something developed between them. And she tells me that this one moment, she found herself in a garden and the moment was due. And the car that was supposed to deliver her to hospital came a little bit late, about 4 hours late. So I took a guess because I never needed to ask more questions, but that perhaps I had been born in a garden. And that meant I had been resigned to life of a farmer at an early age. I don't know what happened, but Mom never managed to live with my father after that. In fact, she left home when I was just comprehending that you can count from 1 to 10, or even say A, B, C, D. So I stayed with this hardworking gentleman who was my father. Dad had a very good definition of what hard work was. And very often, he would wake us up and take us to the garden and tell us, the only reason I do all this kind of stuff for you guys is because I want you guys to live a great life. And I'm working every moment to make sure this happens. So he used to do all kinds of trade. He was in the garden, he was in the markets, I found it interesting. I mean, why was he doing it? So every time he would wake me up, and this one moment I wasn't into it at all. So he knocks onto my door and it says, Bakka, we have to go to the garden. It was very early in the morning. And I tell him, Dad, you just look at me. I'm not the kind of built-up muscle that you would carry a hose. And he said, no. You just go and try. That day I went and came back. And then he chased me and told me, okay, you go to the shop. Tend the shop at least. I went, opened the shop, but passed through the back door and found myself playing with the kids. And then he noticed. So he came and he looked me in the eye and said, you never went to the garden today. You came back to the shop, you never tended it. What's your problem? And then I thought about it, but never took it so serious. And so I went back to school that same year. And that was Dad. We could sit in the evening and share a chat, perhaps sing some songs with my little sister. He used to cook for us, by the way. He would prepare his meal, and it was so interesting. So in my 5th year in primary school, in class, and I didn't know why they had actually come for me. So when I reached home, it's when I realized that Dad was dead. He had been gruesomely murdered by grumpy youth, and something came to me. I was my little sister, so she began crying right away. And I began thinking that the future was going to be different. So from that time, we were still young kids. We were thinking closely, how would these young kids take this situation? Their dad has died at a young age. So we began migrating from home to home. And one time they took me from school. School fees had become a problem. And they kept me with my granddad. And it's when I also got another appreciation about what life was. Kids from failed families across who couldn't afford a meal could come actually home and eat. I saw girls who get pregnant at 14 or even 15. Or even mothers who used to die in early childbirth because there was no healthcare center across. But reflecting about all this, I came to realize something, that our situation was not any different from what was happening across the other world. But there was other many people who are having these kind of struggles at an early age, and they are looking for something different. 1 billion people in this world go to bed hungry, 200 million of them being children. I've seen them. More than half the world, that's about 3 billion people, are living on less than $2 a day. And they're caught in this vicious cycle of poverty, never thinking where there will be a chance for them to realize their dreams. So, at a very early age, I got this kind of interest that something needed to change. And as I lay home, no school fees, I got this one chance opportunity when an uncle of mine came to me and told me, you know what, George, I'm going to take you back to school, but on only one condition. You never forget where you have come from. So I spent my whole years in high school from S1 to about senior 5, reading a lot about change, how can we change Africa, reading about political revolutionaries. In fact, I got very involved in advocacy at a young age. So this one moment I was in a class of social entrepreneurship, and a mentor of mine, the teacher, comes to me and says, Bakka, there is this young man who lives in Ibali, he's called Fred. He has dropped out of school, and he's thinking of starting a small business, just began as a simple sharing. And he needs about 50,000 shillings. It's about $5, right? And about $20 perhaps. And he's thinking about a small business. He wants to lay bricks, and he's going to get this kind of school fees to pay back to school. And I had seen that in my own life. So I had a little bit of bucks in my pocket, so I handed it to him right away. I'm like, you give Fred this money, let him go and do his brick business. But then as he was walking, something occurred to me. I'm like, wait, what is he going to do? He's going to lay bricks. How many? Into a bunch of them. I'm like, okay, if he lays 1,000 bricks, perhaps he makes 200,000, and he's going to pay school fees for 100. There is some return that I can get. He's like, yes. So I'm like, okay. I also want to make a little bit of back. So tell him to return my 50,000 shillings and also give me small little profit, little interest. And it happened well. So it was very successful. And my mentor came back to me the other time in school and brought me more other youth who were actually thinking about starting small businesses. So I never had all this money within me. So I collected a couple of bunch of guys in my classroom, in my own class, and I say, guys, I began with this 50,000 shillings, I lent it out last time, it came back. And now there are more people who are actually needing these kind of things. Let's bring our money together and let's give it to other youth to start businesses in the micro sector, if someone to start taxis. Globally, and in Africa, we have about 650 million youth. Only 20% of these youth are having access to the kind of financial services they need to make sure they realize their kind of dreams. So you thought of an idea. What if what we did could actually be expanded? And we did micro investments from the same kind of youth, collecting into a fund, and then invest in other youth who wanted to start these kind of businesses. At that moment, Africa Youth Investment Fund was born. Wow. And the fund has grown from just the 4 guys who were in the cube to about 200 youth currently, most of them coming from Makerere. They come to our offices, do small micro investments, $2, $10, $50, and they're currently investing in other youth. Thank you. So doing all this kind of stuff, something more happened. One time I was excited about how we can take it across Africa, and then something happened. A young gentleman, I think he had spent about 10 years, about maybe a year, to be specific, looking for a job. So he comes to my office and says, Bakka, I want to work with you guys. I'm like, but you could think about starting a business. I was like, I began a small business, it collapsed. And going into this interaction, we found that actually their biggest problem was lack of office space, lack of mentorship. And we said we could want to do something about it. So I talked to my friend Joachim, and he's like, I have a small garage at home. So I'm like, let's put our first business center there. So we hosted our first 5 businesses in that garage. And one time I got a chance to participate in the Azisha Prize, and I shared the concept of a business center. We did well, we won $20,000, and we set up a business incubation center, currently hosting about 40 to 60 businesses. Nice. In Wandega here. And offer them office space, business mentorship, to help them scale their businesses. And that's how the idea of Angels Ventures was born. And going through this kind of work, I never forgot where I'd come from. So this one moment in time, I was thinking about my farming background. And I was in mid-high school. My grandma was very scared about what was happening around me. So I tell her that there is this group of women who are living in Serere. I want to go and visit them. I want to do something with them. And my mother my grandmother was like, if you leave this house, you go for good. Because I want you to concentrate on books, and for you want to do your political things. She used to call them political things. I'm like, okay, Mom. I asked him more. She said, no, nothing like that, nothing like that. So she said, if you want to live, you live on your own basis. So the next day, I got my backpack and went to the village and met a group of women. And they had begun a small round savings circle between them. And we told them, what's the problem? And like, we want to invest in our own farms, but we don't have money, we lack inputs, we lack training. So we said, okay, you guys have started, let's also add some little money. So we gave them little money, about $100 that we actually had saved ourselves. And then something amazing happened, that it not only stopped from that group, but actually expanded to other groups. So currently we are working with about 20 to 30 groups of women in eastern Uganda, where we provide inputs, we provide training, and in the same moment we thought about, couldn't we buy this produce from them and perhaps process it and put it to market? And something more was born, Angels Foods. And one time I was in this village and I was sleeping in a house. I wanted to write something down over the night because I'd had a very long day. So we had no light. So I asked the ladies, I've heard these people selling solar systems. Why haven't you accessed them? Like, we haven't seen them. So next day I tell my boys, please get some solar systems and bring them home. And that's how Angels Energy was born. So Angels AGRIC Fund has completely come in to transform the whole agricultural value chain, and that's what we are focusing on. If I may say something, youth are thinking, youth are engaging, but the only way we are going to transform Africa is if we give the chance for youth ideas to engage on a bigger level. And that's the only reason we have put up something different called the Angels Forum, where we think that if we engage youth who are thinking and pass their policies and ideas to other youth, then something different can also happen. So recently we got ourselves to thinking, what has been the genesis of our work? we've found that every time we've been faced with a problem, we have rounded a business around it, from energy to food. And so many people may want to represent humanity as robotic kind of people who don't care, but that's not true. I think humanity wants to make a difference. And the idea of starting a business to solve a social need is adequately doing change. And I believe that anyone, if we are going to make sure that every kid in this world has access to food and doesn't sleep hungry, then we've got to think about the market. To make sure that all of us go to school and give a chance to every kid to go to school, we've got to think about how to use the market to do it. And it's something everybody can do. So that's the genesis of how Angels Initiatives, the organization we started 3 years ago, has come to play. We're asking ourselves a critical question. What if we could use the creative vibrance of business to solve social problems from poverty, inequality, and perhaps promote prosperity in Africa? I believe that Africa's moment is changing, and the future is very bright. We can build cities, not just cities, but cities that care about their own people. We can build bridges, not just bridges that connect sections of people, but fuel opportunity between people. It's true. This is something that is possible. And I know if everybody participates in this kind of vision and does his own small work, reacts to different situations as they may happen, Africa is an emerging global power. And not just a global power, but one that cares about his people, that wants to give a chance to every kid to go to school, and give a chance to those who dare to dream that something is alive and can be achieved. Thank you so much.